The Mission Impossible series in 5 minutes. Your synopsis, should you choose to accept it, of the story so far. Spoiler alert! Ethan Hunt is the point man in a squad of IMF agents, led by his mentor, Jim Phelps. IMF stands for Impossible Mission Force, but nobody calls it that because even in the 90s that sounded stupid. The team is tasked with observing the theft of the non-official cover list, or NOC list, from the American embassy in Prague and nabbing the buyer. Unfortunately, the mission goes tits up, leaving Ethan seemingly as the only survivor. Ethan meets with IMF Director Kittredge and learns the NOC list was phony, and the mission was designed to lure out a mole. The IMF has intel the mole wants to sell the list to a contact named Max, and Ethan is now the prime suspect. He flees and, back at the safe house, figures out how to contact Max. His teammate Claire, who is also Phelps' wife, unexpectedly reappears and they begin to work together. Ethan warns Max the NOC list is a fake, but vows to deliver the real NOC list for $10 million and a meeting with the mole. Ethan and Claire recruit 2 disavowed agents for the heist, hacker Luther Stickle and pilot Franz Krieger, and they obtain the real NOC list from CIA HQ. They travel to London where Ethan is tracked down by a totally not dead Phelps. Phelps explains to Ethan that Kittredge is the mole, but Ethan quietly realizes Phelps has gone rogue and that Krieger is working for him. He just doesn't know whether Claire is involved. Ethan arranges to pass the NOC list to Max aboard a train but tips off Kittredge. Disguised as Phelps, Ethan then learns Claire was dirty all along. The real Phelps then appears, but when he realizes his cover is blown,
Good morning, Mr. Phelps.
He kills Claire and gives Ethan a mild shove. Ethan makes the most of not being killed by Phelps by blowing up Phelps' helicopter and squashing him with it. Kittredge arrests Max, recovers the NOC list, and reinstates Ethan and Luther as IMF agents. Fast forward a few years and Ethan has grown his hair longer and is now really into Limp Bizkit. Unfortunately, another rogue IMF agent, Sean Ambrose, has used Ethan's identity to try and steal a sample of a new supervirus, Chimera, and its cure, Bellerophon, from Dr. Vladimir Nikovich. Believing Ambrose's ex-girlfriend Naya to be the best way to get to him, the IMF tasks Ethan with recruiting her. Ethan does so by crashing into her car and sleeping with her.
This wasn't exactly by the book.
Tracking Ambrose to Sydney, Ethan discovers Nikovich wasn't carrying a Chimera sample when Ambrose killed him, and that the virus itself is still in his Sydney lab. Ethan plans to break into the lab to destroy it, but Ambrose learns this by disguising himself as Ethan again and tricking Naya into revealing the plot. Ambrose and his henchmen ambush Ethan in the lab, and Naya injects herself with the virus. Ambrose sets Naya loose in Sydney, planning to trigger a pandemic and make billions from selling Bellerophon. Hunt finds Ambrose but appears to be captured by Ambrose's right-hand man Stamper and shot. The victim, however, is really Stamper in the movie's 3rd Ethan Hunt mask, allowing the real Hunt to escape with the Bellerophon as it suddenly dawns on the audience why they gave this script to the guy who made Face Off. After a pretty absurd chase on most counts, Ambrose is killed in a flurry of slow motion and Naya is cured. Aww. Anyway, forget her because we pick up Ethan's story a few years later. Ethan's now an instructor at the IMF, unbeknownst to his fiancée Julia. However, Ethan is compelled by Agent John Musgrave to rescue one of Ethan's protégés, Lindsay, who is being captured while investigating an arms dealer named Owen Davian. Ethan finds Lindsay, but she's killed by an explosive implanted in her head. Using intel grabbed from the mission, IMF tech expert Benji Dunn determines Davian will be in Vatican City to obtain a mystery object called the Rabbit's Foot. Ethan quickly marries Julia, then heads to Italy with his team to successfully snatch Davian without IMF authorization. Unfortunately, Davian's crew grab Davian back before Ethan can return him, and Julia is kidnapped. Davian gives Ethan 48 hours to find and deliver the Rabbit's Foot, but Ethan is apprehended by the IMF and accused of going rogue. Musgrave helps Ethan escape, telling Ethan the Rabbit's Foot is in Shanghai. Ethan retrieves it and brings it to Davian, but has a bomb planted in his head in return. Musgrave appears, revealing he's gone rogue and is working with Davian, demonstrating yet again that all of the IMF's worst enemies actually work for the IMF.
It's complicated.
Ethan escapes, kills Davian, and has Julia electrocute him to disable the bomb, which threatens to kill him any second. Julia kills Musgrave, saves Ethan, and the two head off on their honeymoon. The next time we see Ethan, he's locked up in a Moscow prison. He's broken out by Benji and IMF agent Jane Carter and learns that a nuclear strategist for Russian intelligence, codenamed Cobalt, plans to buy nuclear launch codes from an assassin named Sabine Moreau. Ethan leads a mission into the Kremlin to identify Cobalt, but the mission is sabotaged and an explosion destroys the building. Ethan's team is blamed and the entire IMF is disavowed.
So what happens now?
The IMF secretary plans to allow Ethan to escape to track down Cobalt, but is killed by Russian intelligence. Ethan flees the attack with the secretary's analyst, William Brandt. Brandt IDs Cobalt as Kurt Hendricks, who bombed the Kremlin to steal a nuclear launch control device. Moreau is trading the codes with Hendricks' partner Wistrom in Dubai. Ethan and the team meet with both parties separately. Moreau becomes wise to the ruse, but Jane kicks her out a window. Ethan pursues Wistrom, who's actually Hendricks in disguise, but loses him in a sandstorm. While Ethan digs up new intel, former field agent Brandt tells Benji and Jane that Ethan's wife was killed by a Serbian hit squad while they were on holiday, and Ethan's revenge mission got him locked up in a Russian prison. The team then heads to Mumbai. Hendricks and Wistrom use an old Soviet satellite to launch a nuke at San Francisco, but Benji is able to kill Wistrom and Ethan manages to abort the missile as Hendricks watches on dying. The IMF is cleared of the Kremlin bombing and the team regroup in the US with Luther, where Ethan reveals to Brandt that Julia's death was faked. Ethan has then proposed a new mission taking on the Syndicate, which brings us neatly to the upcoming events of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Good luck, Ethan. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.